There's going to be a true fight over what the meaning of MAGA is, whether J.D. Vance is the representative of it, or a poll in that debate, for example, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State of the United States, and traditionally an advocate of an extroverted American policy, of foreign policy, and more market-oriented domestic policies. We don't know who's going to emerge from that fight, but that there will be a fight.
This is The Times at 1 with Andrew Neil. New York elects a new mayor today, and it looks as if the epicenter of global capitalism is about to choose a self-styled socialist. Zoran Mandami is the Democratic candidate, but dines out on his socialism and general radicalism. At one stage, he advocated defunding the police and, more recently, globalizing the Intifada. His main opponent is former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who's running as an independent after losing the Democratic primary. His closet has its own fair share of skeletons. Let's speak now to Dana Rubenstein, Metro reporter at the New York Times. Dana, voting just getting underway in New York now. Is the consensus still on election day that Mandani is likely to be the clear victor?
Yeah, I mean, he is in almost every reputable poll leading by double digits over Cuomo, followed by the Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa. So yeah, unless there is some sort of unexpected upset, it does seem likely that Zoran Mamdani will be the mayor-elect of New York City by the end of the day.
Now, he's picking up a lot of younger voters, some of whom won't have voted before, but that's probably not enough to clinch victory. What's his appeal to older voters? Because I see he's campaigned a lot on cost of living issues like housing and healthcare.
Right. I mean, to be clear, his base is significantly younger than that of Cuomo. But yes, I mean, the question of affordability in New York City is one that, goes beyond particular age sets. I mean, New York City is an extremely unaffordable city. Housing vacancy is at a sort of historic low. And, the message of affordability appeals to people, of all ages.
Now, he's promised to do a lot of things, but does the mayor actually have the powers to do a lot of what Mr. Mamdani is promising to do?
That is going to be a challenge for him. His goal of providing universal daycare, for example, is an extremely expensive one that is predicated on the idea of getting tax hikes on the wealthy and big corporations. And in New York State, it is actually the capital, Albany, New York, and the state legislature and governor that control those purse strings. So, he will, if he wins by a large enough margin, have some political momentum behind him. But that is, that will be a challenge for him. And, there's a similar scenario playing out with his promise to make New York City's buses free. That will require some, the involvement of the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, which is a state-run entity that is effectively controlled by the governor.
Yeah. And I see the governor hasn't been necessarily that helpful to him on that, but we'll see. If he does win tonight, I would suggest he'll become the most prominent Democrat in America. Is that good or bad news for Donald Trump and MAGA?
Wow, that is a bit outside of my my skill set. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I'm also not sure if he would indeed be the most prominent Democrat in America. I guess that's something that maybe you would be able to answer more than me from an international standpoint.
Well, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's only a mayoral election. It's only New York, but it is getting an amazing amount of international coverage. And I think part of the problem is that so many other leading Democrats at the moment are a bit long in the tooth and a bit boring and dull that he seems to be a media dream, whether you're covering this from New York, London, or even New Delhi. Tell me this. Can you give us an idea? When will we get the result, do you think? When will it become clear that he has won, if that indeed is what's going to happen?
Well, the polls close at 9. The bigger the margin, the faster the results will come out. So, there's some people predicting we'll have results by 9:15, 9:30. But, if it's a closer margin, they'll have to count more votes.
Right, 9 o'clock. That's 2 o'clock London time. So we're going to have to stay up late to see that. Also, big gubernatorial elections in New Jersey and in Virginia too. So it'll be interesting to see. Daniel Rubenstein, busy day for you. I thank you for your time on Times Radio today. Now, let's stick with America and look at the explosion of rhetoric from the far right offered platforms by sympathetic broadcasters. Tucker Carlson recently conducted a softball interview with Holocaust denier Nick Fuentes, a white supremacist who has described Adolf Hitler as, quote, awesome and, quote, cool. Candace Owen has also shown some sympathy for Hitler and the Nazis, which might seem strange coming from a black woman. And, of course, Steve Bannon regularly likes to fan the flames of the far right. The normalization of Nazi talk is quite the phenomenon on the American far right, and it's splitting the MAGA movement. So let's speak to Noah Rothman, senior writer at National Review and regular contributor to this program. Noah, is this guy Nick Fuentes, is he a significant figure or a nasty nut job? Or perhaps both?
I would say perhaps both. It really depends on whom you're speaking with. There is an element on the right, evinced by Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts, who ignited this scandal, that seems to believe elements of the online commentary class that Tucker Carlson is representative of are a politically important constituency that needs courting. And there's some speculation in the United States that the embrace of Tucker Carlson that Kevin Robertson did over the last week and ignited this fury is an effort to boost Vice President J.D. Vance's profile ahead of his succession fight when Donald Trump leaves the political stage. I think there's a lot of merit to that. But there's also a lot of merit to the fact that this is not in his influence, Fuentes' influence, Tucker Carlson's influence, is not an uncontested phenomenon. Kevin Roberts' statement produced an outpouring of hostility from the establishmentarian right, as evinced by institutions like the Wall Street Journal and others that still maintain some credibility on the right. And all of them are buttressed by Donald Trump, who himself is philo-Semitic, has surrounded himself with American Jews. And when he attends, for example, a session at the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, and heaps praise on Israel and America's relationship with Israel, it's demonstrative of the bulwark that's in the way of those who would normalize anti-Semitism and use it as a means to seek and achieve power. So there is a real factious fight on the right over this. But I'm tempted to say that it is a tempest that doesn't necessarily reflect the evolution of the party. But there are some who are attempting to use it to seek and achieve power.
So, does that include people like Tucker Carlson? Not just giving this guy Fuentes a platform, but softballing him during a long interview. Well, what's he up to, Tucker Carlson, on this?
Well, it's not just Nick Fuentes, right? I mean, he did the exact same thing to the Iranian president. He did the same thing to Vladimir Putin, Russian president.
He did indeed.
There seems to be, in Tucker Carlson's agitation, an effort to elevate representatives of an anti-American establishment, individuals who support the end of the American-led world order and its replacement with something different. I'm not even sure what that is in his mind, but he's agitating in that way. And you have to say that his project is aimed almost squarely at the right now. One of the things that Kevin Roberts said in his own defense of embracing Tucker Carlson is that we need to train all our fire on our political opponents, which rings hollow because Tucker Carlson himself does not train his fire on the American left. In fact, I don't remember the last time he was critical of the American left. No. He's almost exclusively focused on undermining the establishmentarian impulse on the right that is traditionally conservative, small government, principles of moral decency and forthrightness, fiscal prudence, American extroversion on the world stage, all that stuff. He doesn't like it. So he wants to supplant that and replace it with something much more introverted, much more insular, something that sees America retreat behind its two oceans. And there's a real fight over that on the American right. But Donald Trump himself has been kind of quiet on it. And while his rhetoric is sometimes supportive of those populist elements on the American right, his administration's policies, both of them so far, have really not adhered to the policy prescriptions that the insecure, introspective, populist American right would have him embrace. So there's going to be a succession fight, and there's going to be a true fight over what the meaning of MAGA is, whether J.D. Vance is the representative of it, or a poll in that debate, for example, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State of the United States, and traditionally an advocate of an extroverted American policy, of foreign policy, and more market-oriented domestic policies. We don't know who's going to emerge from that fight, but that there will be a fight, we can be certain.
Well, it sounds like post-Trump, there will be growing splits on the MAGA right that in some ways they kind of remind you of what happens on the far left, which is always splitting and bifurcating and all the rest of it. Is this what's in store for the MAGA right now?
Yeah, I believe so. I think that's a fair appraisal. And because the president's policies are not ideologically doctrinaire, you can really pick a la carte from his approach to governance and say, well, this is the true meaning of MAGA. This is the true meaning of MAGA. A lot of people who support Donald Trump's policies like that. They call it pragmatist. But you can see in his policies elements of conventional conservatism. You can see in it the Republican Party's formerly progressive identity. Before Barry Goldwater, for example, more Eisenhower-esque, the use of state power to shape the social contract and nudge individuals in directions that the federal government thinks they should go in. It's not a conservative philosophy, it's a progressive philosophy, but it's not alien to the Republican Party. And that's going to be the ideological fight that Donald Trump will bequeath to the GOP when he leaves the political stage. What is MAGA? Is it conservative? Is it progressive? Is it something in the middle? And do we want to continue in that mold, or do we want to shape and forge a new political destiny for the Republican Party? Those questions are going to be very much open, I think, when Donald Trump leaves the stage, even if he endorses a successor, which I'm not sure we can count on. I think the president likes the political drama of a succession fight, and I don't know if he'd want to intervene in order to prevent that fight.
But in this perhaps coming ideological battle on the MAGA right, will people like Nick Fuentes and Candace Owen, will they be players? Will they have influence? I mean, the word Nazi is thrown about so much these days that it's sadly it's been devalued. It should be kept for very special cases. But I would say, tell me if I'm wrong, that in Fuentes' case, he is a Nazi.
Yeah, I think he self-describes as a racist, self-describes as an anti-Semite, and says Hitler's cool and we should admire and emulate him. I mean, what else do you need?
If it looks like a Nazi and walks like a Nazi, sounds like a Nazi, it's a Nazi.
And that's why I think the president is obliged to intervene in this conflict, because it is roiling the right. And I've been impressed by the forces arrayed against the American right's drift into this thoughtless, anti-Semitic an attempt to find an excuse for all of life's travails. You know, it's a simple and pat exercise in displacing the responsibility for your lot in life onto nebulous forces like the Jews. So it's an attractive thing to people who are paranoid. And I think the president should intervene in that sense. But it's not just the right. I mean, we experienced over the course of 2024 an effort on the part of the Democratic Party to validate the concerns, according to the Associated Press, as late as October 31st of 2024, just days before the election. Kamala Harris was trying to integrate the pro-Palestinian demonstrators into their coalition. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators who laid siege to the Democratic National Committee in 2023, who tore at the gates of the Democratic Party's nominating convention like a zombie horde. Like, these people were not on your side and needed to be extirpated, but the Democratic Party couldn't summon the courage to do that. I hope the Republican Party doesn't follow their lead.
Well, we shall see whether the MAGA right is prepared to draw firm lines against white nationalism, racism, anti-Semitism, because that seems to be the debate that is coming up. And the role Mr. Trump plays in that will also be interesting. No, while I've got you here, we learned, of course, this morning of the death of former Vice President Dick Cheney. Now, I remember he was once reviled by the left as the epitome of hard-right, interventionist, neocon republicanism. But he's gone to his grave reviled by this new hard right that we're talking about, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. And only because he has maintained ideological consistency throughout his entire career. He was a conservative. He was a conservative and a dedicated and honest conservative. And because he advocated aggressively for policies under the George Bush administration that were resented by the left, he was caricatured as himself being a national socialist, a fascist. I mean, I don't know if anybody in the audience is old enough to remember 20 years ago, but this was common rhetoric on the American left. And since he had broke with the Trump administration, broke with President Trump's more progressive impulses, to say nothing of his manifest character defects, he became a subject of contempt for the American right, at least those who are motivated by partisanship above ideological commitments. But it's all because he was a consistent figure throughout his political career, and we should be grateful for his legacy.
Indeed, how things change. Noah Rothman, as always, thank you for joining me on Times Radio.